Hey everybody out there in YouTube land, this is Jake Jabarelli of Jabarelli.com. Just a bunch of referral links. So I know my videos have been a bit more scarce as of late. Been changing my scope. I'm still doing all those other things in the past, although I have to admit I probably spend more time actually updating my viewers on what I'm actually doing. But as I mentioned in several of my videos so far, my day job has been kicking me in the butt. And it's taken up a lot more of my time. Things have gotten a lot more busy, but I'm in the middle of like 10 projects, so it's not that surprising. I have time on the weekends, so you know, keeping up with things here. So I do spend an awful lot of time doing analysis, both at my day job and outside of it. It's kind of my whole thing. I enjoy it thoroughly. I don't even know if I'd care if I ever got paid for it, but I like it. And that's payment enough. So I'm spending a lot of time here with NiceHash, trying to figure out which of these GPUs is the best to mine with. And I think some people have done this already, no, but then you had to have spent all the money to have gotten to that point, and I don't want to spend the money before I know what's the best. And maybe that means I don't jump and do something right away, but it also means I don't spend any money, and that's my goal here, is to save myself from making mistakes, and if I can, save my viewers from the exact same thing. I don't want you to have to spend money, unless you enjoy it, which a lot of people do, spending money to figure these answers out. I want to figure these things out before I do that. So I made a chart using what to mine. What to Mine has a GPU profitability ranking chart, both for miners, that is ASIC miners, and for GPUs. But they don't tell you information that I'd like to know. And I guess some of that information isn't pertinent to my viewers per se, because you guys only have what you have. The most important thing to you is, how much does it cost? You know, how much does it cost? What is your local power rate? Mine changes. The base is under 10 cents per kilowatt hour. But as soon as you pass the base, it's the same rate forever, which I guess isn't terribly bad. Some people have much staggered rates. Some places have flat rate altogether. Mine, it goes up to 15 cents after 10. So it goes from 10 after the first 500, and then everything after that is 15. That's 500 kilowatt hours. The city is trying to encourage people to keep it under 500 kilowatt hours. So the things that I wanted to know are based on a local business that can offer me a pretty good deal on power. They won't charge me for power at all. It's all inclusive. It's what they call full gross. When you're looking to lease, I'm not going to go into the full details of what all this means, but if you've ever run a business, you know what these things are. If you haven't, I'll try to give some general overview. A full gross lease means that literally everything you could possibly need, power, water, garbage, any of the support functionality, you know, coffee break rooms, bathrooms, all those things that a business needs are included in the lease price. So you pay just the lease price and everything else included. That is an amazing thing when you know that one of the aspects of your usage of that facility is going to blossom ridiculously. And that in particular, for me, is power. So this is about how much power I think I can get out of them without drastically increasing how much space I use at the location. Since I don't have a lot of money up front, I know I can spend a certain amount of money just to meet this amount. So that's that 3,000 up there. Let me zoom in for those of you on mobile. I'm sorry, I always forget about that. There we go. 3,000 watts, or 3 kilowatts. In the United States, to give some just general ideal, we run at 120 volts. Typically, most homes and small businesses run at 120 volts. And so, in the I think the circuit breakers per circuit run at about 15 amps. I think it can go up to 18 amps at the highest. So it's a little bit of simple math, and I'll show you what that means a circuit can handle. 120 times at most 18, but typically 15 means 1800. So most, if you've ever noticed that on electronic devices, let's say a personal portable heater, For some reason, they have a limit of 1800 watts. That seems so arbitrary. No, it's based on the US numbers. That's what it is. There are circuits that do 20 amps. There are that do 18, there are that 15, but the more common is 15. So it's better to stick to the common denominator so you don't break the ones that aren't 18 or 20. And yes, you can get higher ones. But like I said, in a residential place, a home, you're typically going to find 15 amps the max. So 1800 is the limit. That's the typical limit. So that means I can fit. The reason this number is 3000 instead of 3600 is because I'm trying to shore up for the cost of the computer that I'm running these GPUs on. That's what it is. These are all GPUs if you didn't recognize the names. So I've got a bunch of other numbers out here to the right. Why do I have these numbers? Because the numbers that are on here are very few. We've got dates, hash rates, powers, revenue, total profit, what coin you're mining, and then I can set how much it costs me. So the reason I'm doing this is because the place that I'm looking to rent or lease from this business, which gives me unlimited power, costs about $300 a month. So I need to basically fit in $300 a month worth of cost or more. The more I can go above 300, the better. That means I'm actually making money on top of what they're charging me. So I'm looking at what GPU devices I could use that would fit that scope. And since I'm not going to buy these new, that would be silly, in my opinion. What's the price? This is the average used price of any one of these cards. So they don't give me this information. I had to figure this information out over here. They give me this information. How much power does the thing use? And their estimation based on my inputted amount of cost per kilowatt hour subtracted. So the total revenue is how much you make, period, without any cost. The profit's how much you get after your cost. And since I have to account for the fact that you can't just run these GPUs by themselves and plug them in the wall and they work, that'd be amazing. I've actually been trying to figure that out, but that's a second video. I'm looking at this and saying, well, I want to be able to figure out, what's the efficiency? Well, that's what this is. I should probably write that in here. This is the efficiency of these. So I figured out the best efficiency are these cards, which I gave prices to, and a couple of them are here. So these ones are the best ones to do. These are obviously the least expensive models that do the best performance. Seems to be this GTX 1660 Ti is easily the best card. It's way low on power. I mean, you can overclock it and make it use more. So if anyone's out there going, hey, that's not right, yeah, you're right. It can be overclocked and use more power. I'm just using with their numbers so I can justify my calculations more easily. These numbers obviously change. Profit changes day to day, moment to moment. But this is only from yesterday, so it's relatively accurate. And I know the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum and other things, they're changing. And just have to start from somewhere. If I could make this more adaptable, I would. So efficiency among these cards is all about the same, but this is the cheapest one. So in order to fit within this amount, how many of these things do I have to use in order to make the base amount? So $300 a month, how much is that per day? Well, it's roughly 10. With the total cost, it's probably more like $11. So I had to make at least $11 per day to make this worthwhile. Then I actually get a profit for anything beyond the first $11 or so. So how many of these things would it take me? I have to buy 10 of them if it's making this much. Remember, I can negate the cost, the difference between these two things. So this number doesn't really mean it. It's really, I'm more looking at this number as the important number. If I buy 10 of these cards, I make just enough to get by. Just enough to make the cost. And I can easily do that, but their power is so low here. But in order to make money, up to the limit of the room that I'll be using, I could buy 30 of them. Now, of course, that would cost me, as you can see out here, $9,000. But I would be making a total, my revenue would be close to 30, as would be true for all of these cards here. And then I take out the $11 it cost me for the room, and I get $20 a day. Now, the reason I made this chart was because I wanted to be able to see how much it would cost me to do that. One of the things I really like about GPUs that ASICs just don't lend themselves to is that once the ASIC is spent, that is, once you get past the point of its usefulness anymore, you can't use it for anything else. You can't resell it. Well, you can resell it, but you really won't get very much for it. I paid $4,500 a piece for my Antminer L3 Pluses, granted almost 3 years ago. I got the money, I got their value. I made more than $10,000 out of both of them. I made 20 grand actually, spent 9,000 and made 20,000. So it's entirely possible that you get money back. But now those things are worth maybe $100 a piece, and that's just disappointing because there's not all they can do is Litecoin. That's what they're made for. That's all they can do. And right now to run them costs me twice what they make. It's just impractical. They're basically just gigantic paperweights or door stoppers or something other, a thing to put your car on top of. They're made of aluminum, so probably not a good idea. But I guess what I'm saying is that they're useless now. Yes, they have a use, but they're not going to make any money. Well, that's not true. They don't make enough to make themselves profitable anymore. So the neat thing about GPUs is that even once you get past the use case, they're still technically GPUs. You could use them to do graphics on a computer. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be very good for the latest game, but they still have that practical use, and so you can still sell them for something more than nothing. Like I said, I paid $4,500 for my ASIC miners. Now they're worth $100. That's a massive loss of value. Now, with a GPU like maybe a Radeon 7, which costs like $1,200, actually I think it still costs about $1,200, even when they're brand new. They still have a great value. Or one of these, RTX 2080, or even let's say an old one, let's say a GTX 1060, still goes for $200-300. Even though it's a 4-year-old card. Actually, this one, 4-year-old card, and yet it still goes for several $100. Now, brand new is probably close to $500 to $1,000, but it really hasn't lost much of its value because it still has a use. So, anyways, I like the idea of ASIC mining, but it loses its value so quickly. It's just like a bright star; it burns out and then it's pointless. So GPU mining, even though it's more complicated in the sense you have to build a huge rig and you have to have this rack and you have to have all this stuff associated with it, it still has an ROI. You can still sell it later. Even a 4-year-old card like this, you can still sell it and it still has some value close to, or maybe a relative percentage of its original value, which is great, which means that when you look at these cards, you don't look at them as, I'm going to buy them and it's going to cost me, let's say you paid $500, and then when you get to the end of its life, you make $250, as opposed to the ASICs where you pay, let's say it was $500, and then when it gets to the end of its life, you have to sell it for $20. You may as well not sell it at that point. You barely get anything for it. I'd say that ASICs are more like automobiles. At the end of their life, unless you refurbish it, it's worthless. 300,000 miles later, it's barely worth the metal it was built on. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, this is the card I have determined. It's what, year and a half old. I believe, I don't remember exactly, I think I have it out here. If I open up, yeah, here we go. This was the last things that were on this. So it was mining NIM coin. That was what they were estimating. I think if I go to the current listing for that card and refresh what to mine's chart here. Yep, still NIM coin. Price went up just slightly, but this is, in my honest opinion, after doing my calculations, if you got anything out of this video, and I'm sorry it's gone on so long, the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Ti is the best card to use to mine at the price that it is. It has the lowest, where's that hide? It has the lowest cost. It has the relative cost. It has the lowest power usage, 100 watts. I mean, there are ones that are lower, 80, 90. But as far as being the lowest power, basically bang for its buck, how much efficiency it gets. Yeah, you can get more if you're not worried about, as I'm not worried about profit, or not profit, but how much you're spending on the power. then of course it makes more sense to go with these ones. But I guess what I'm saying is that the RTX 2080 Ti here is $1,000. That's 3 times the price of the GTX 1660, but its efficiency is only twice as good. So it means, relatively speaking, it's like it's twice as good, but it costs 3 times as much. So unless you could figure out a way, which I still haven't, to negating the entire cost of this card, so like let's say you used it for a year, and the value of the card only went down $100, then yes, it would be more practical to go with this card than with this one. Because if this one went down $100 in a year's time, then it's lost a third of its value. Whereas this one has only lost a tenth of its value. So if you resell this one a year later for $900, then you've actually gotten your money's worth. You've gotten more than the cost of what you spent. Whereas this one went down to $100. I don't know what the depreciation will be of this card in a year. I imagine that actually won't be, it might even be only $50, but that's the estimate. That's the thing I'm trying to figure out. So when you look at the price of mining, you don't always look at the price of the card only. You have to look at how much it can make, how much it costs you to run, and how much it costs you to buy. Because I guess the only way I look at this is it's like leasing versus owning. And I shouldn't go into the finance of that, but with leasing, you're not going to keep the thing at the end of the time you're done with the lease. You paid what you thought it was worth for the time that you effectively leased or rented it or hired it, and then it's gone, and you don't have to worry about maintaining it anymore. So you spent the money and you don't have the asset. But with this, you spend the money up front, but then you resell it, so you still get some money back at the end. I guess that's better than leasing it ultimately. The idea of leasing is that you don't have to pay the full price. So if you lease the card instead of buying it, then you would have only spent, let's say, $100, $200 over a year, and then when you're done, you don't have the thing anymore, but you didn't have to spend $1,000 for it. You only spent the lease price. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's in a business proposition. I should probably go into more detail in a different video on how this works. It's how much does it cost to run, how much do you make out of it, and how much does it cost to buy. And as long as those numbers are better than the other, then you can determine which is the best card. At the moment, it seems like this card is definitely the best card for me in trying to do this. And obviously people are like, well, you should go with the Radeon 4. Well, I've looked for Radeon 4s. They're really hard to find. And they're relatively expensive. I mean, more than twice as expensive, even used, as the 1660 is. So I get less than half as many of them, even though the performance is higher. And I know you can definitely overclock this thing to 300 watts. It's only 3 times better. Alright, so you pay twice as much for 3 times the performance. Okay, that's actually pretty good, because you're getting more performance than the cost, as opposed to the difference between that and the 2080 Ti here, where you're paying 3 times as much for only half the performance. So it's actually 1 times worse, or 1x worse, than going with the Radeon. But like I said, I can't find very many Radeons. If I were to go with the Radeon, I would want to buy like 12 of them. I can barely find 2. There just aren't a lot because everybody wants them. They're a really good card, no doubt. I don't want to spend, $30,000 trying to find, 10 of these things. So, and I realized I would be getting my money back after I sold them again. But it's this video's gone on a lot longer than I wanted it to. I just want to try to get at the point of that my result of this research so far seems to point at the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Ti, lowest power, best performance relative to its neighbors, and lowest cost. So once I get more of these on table, I purchased a rig, rig mount, rig risers. I'm going to be doing some more videos on that. I'm doing things that if you guys have ever watched Red Panda Mining, which I have watched, you can see that guy's doing way more than I'm doing. He's way more stuff involved, and there's even plenty of people out there who have way more rigs than I can even possibly imagine to have. But I'm coming at this from a standpoint of how economically feasible is this. If you're making a lot of money, like I guess the example Red Panda recently talked about was the Bitmain Antminer Z15 ASIC miner, and he still doesn't. He was sent one for a test trial, so it's all he bought it. But about $4,000, you could make the money back. I think they said within 9 months. The ROI that fast is actually quite impressive. So I actually have my ROIs out here, with this build of buying 30 of these things at this, making this much money, my ROI would be 10 months. Not bad, but I mean these are the ROIs for these things that I found prices on. If I can find this many of this thing, you know, and mine it at the for free within this power range, my ROIs would be these values. So I mean, it would be practical to go with the 5700 or the 5700 XT. I still like the GeForce GTX 1660 better because it's a lower power device. So, yeah, I think I'm coming up with the answers, and I just wanted to show you guys what I've been doing.